Eli did not begin with a story. He began with a question. Under the stars, with grandfather beside him and the night air moving softly through the trees, he asked, "How can I be brave when I feel afraid?" The words came out quietly, but once they were spoken, they did not feel small. They carried everything he had been trying to hold in. By day, Eli worked, helped where he could, shared what he had, and tried to do right. But fear kept finding him in ordinary places. When he made a mistake, his first urge was to cover it, to look away, to hope no one would ask. When he thought about tomorrow, his mind ran ahead of him and filled the road with problems he could not solve yet. And at night, after the village had gone still and the lamps were out, he sometimes lay awake listening to every creak and whisper, wondering whether he would be strong enough when hard days finally came. He had carried that worry in silence. Now he sat with his knees drawn close, looked up at the wide sky, and said the thing he most needed to ask. "How can I be brave?" he asked again. "When I feel afraid." Grandfather did not answer at once. He rose, took the Bible with him, and led Eli farther outside, away from the doorway and into the open yard where the night could be felt more clearly. The breeze moved through the branches above them. Crickets worked steadily in the grass. Across the village, dark rooftops sat under a sky crowded with stars. Eli lowered himself beside grandfather and pulled his knees close again while the Bible rested open across the old man's lap. He watched grandfather's hand move to a fresh page. Then at last, grandfather spoke. "God has not left you alone for hard days," he said. "The Bible tells us about the armor of God." Eli leaned closer at once. Armor changed the shape of the question in his mind. Armor belonged to battles, to danger, to people who had to stand and not run. For a moment, he pictured something heavy and bright, the kind a hero in an old story might wear before walking into a fight. Grandfather saw that look and gave a small smile. "Not iron," he said. "Not something you carry on your shoulders. This is how God helps you stand firm." Eli kept his eyes on the open page. The fear that had tightened him a moment earlier did not vanish, but it shifted. Now curiosity moved in beside it, steady and bright. As he waited to hear what came first, grandfather tapped the page with one finger and said, "First comes the belt of truth." Eli looked down at his middle as if he might see it there at once. In his mind, a band of warm light drew tight around him, not heavy, not hard, but firm enough to hold. "What does truth mean?" he asked. Grandfather answered without hurry. "It means saying what is true when hiding would be easier. It means being honest. It means keeping your word. And it means remembering that what God says stays true even when your feelings shake." As Eli listened, one memory came back whole. A clay cup had slipped from the table the week before when he ran past too fast. It hit the floor and broke apart with a sharp crack. When his mother called from the next room and asked what happened, he had stood still among the pieces. He almost said the cat had done it. The excuse had already reached his mouth. Then he stopped. He looked at the broken cup, took a breath, and admitted, "I knocked it down." Afterward, he gathered the pieces into a basket and carried them away himself. "Was that truth?" Eli asked. "Yes," grandfather said. "And truth steadies a person." In Eli's mind, the belt settled fully into place. It did not squeeze. It held. He lifted his shoulders, planted his hands on the grass, and sat a little straighter. Grandfather turned to the next line and said, "Then comes the breastplate of righteousness." Eli's hand rose to his chest before he could stop it. In his mind, a broad covering of golden light formed there, smooth across the front of him, close and strong. "What does it do?" he asked. Grandfather touched the center of the page and answered, "It guards your heart. Each time you choose kindness over cruelty, honesty over meanness, and right action over easy action, you are putting it on." At once, Eli saw the road from that morning. Jonah had dropped his basket, and apples had burst across the dirt in every direction. Two rolled toward the gutter. Another spun under a mule cart. Several boys looked, laughed once, and kept walking. Jonah dropped to his knees and reached for the nearest ones, but he could not catch them all. Eli had not stopped to think long. He bent down, grabbed one apple before it hit the ditch, then another before a boot crushed it. The last one rolled fast, wobbling toward the cartwheel. He lunged, stretched his arm out flat, and caught it just before the wheel turned. Then, he placed every apple back into Jonah's basket and set the final one on top. Like helping Jonah? Eli asked. Just like that, Grandfather said. The breastplate in Eli's mind brightened over his chest. It felt less like armor for attacking and more like shelter that stayed in place when he chose what was right. Grandfather moved to the next piece and said, "Then come the shoes of peace." Eli lowered his eyes at once. In his mind, a pair of sturdy sandals took shape on his feet, bright and light at the same time, fitted for walking instead of standing still. Grandfather gave a quiet laugh and said, "These may be my favorite." Eli looked up. "Why?" Grandfather pointed toward the path beyond the yard and answered, "Because peace changes how you walk. Some people rush straight into trouble. Some wear themselves out by pacing and worrying. But God's peace teaches you to move steadily, one step, then another, calmly." The words pulled a memory out of Eli before he could answer. He saw the market road in the morning, crowded and noisy. He had been carrying a sack of flour and hurrying because he thought he was late. His feet hit the ground too fast. He rounded a bend, caught a loose stone with his toe, and pitched forward. The sack struck the path first. It split open on impact. White flour burst across the road in a thick cloud, then dropped over the stones, the cart ruts, and his hands. The baker groaned from behind him while dust drifted in the air. Grandfather kept his hand aimed at the road. "Tomorrow will still bring chores, noise, and surprises," he said. "Peace does not remove the road. It helps you walk it." Eli pressed both feet into the grass. In his mind, the sandals settled firmly. They felt ready for a long road, and his hurry began to loosen. Grandfather lifted his hand from the path and said, "Next is the shield of faith." At once, Eli pictured a broad shield in his hands, bright at the center, wide enough to cover him from shoulder to knee. He tightened his fingers around the edge in his mind and asked, "What does faith do?" Grandfather raised his palm toward the sky where the stars burned over the rooftops and answered, "Faith trusts God even when you cannot see the whole path. It does not explain everything at once. It helps you keep standing while you wait." As he spoke, the wind stirred the tree above them. Leaves brushed together. The grass shifted around Eli's ankles. Beyond the yard, the path toward the well disappeared into a dark gap between hedges, and tonight it looked longer than it did by day. Eli kept his eyes on that opening and said what he usually tried not to say aloud. "I do not like not knowing what comes next." Grandfather nodded once. Most people do not. Faith is not pretending the dark is gone. Faith is taking the next step with God beside you. Eli drew in a breath and lifted the shield higher in his imagination. Then the worries came. Tomorrow, failure, the fear that he would have to stand alone. In his mind, they struck like sparks against the shield's face, one after another. Each one flashed, slid away, and vanished. The shield did not split. His arms did not drop. It held. Then Grandfather said, "Now comes the helmet of salvation." Eli lifted his chin at once. In his mind, a bright helmet appeared above him and lowered gently until it rested in place. It did not weigh on his head. It settled there lightly, close and sure. Grandfather's voice softened as he looked at him and said, "This reminds us that we belong to God. We are loved by Him. He watches over us." Eli raised his eyes to the sky again. Stars filled it from one end to the other, sharp above the dark line of roofs and trees. The yard felt small under that spread of night. For a moment, the size of it pressed on him. He was one boy in one patch of grass, with darkness beyond the fence and miles beyond the hills. He swallowed and kept looking up. Then the words beside him began to change what he saw. The sky was still wide. The stars were still far away, but the space above him no longer looked vacant or cold. It looked held together by the same God Grandfather had just named. Eli turned back and asked, "So I do not have to wonder whose I am?" Grandfather answered without hesitation, "No, you do not." Eli gave a small nod. In his mind, the helmet rested clear and bright. The night had not shrunk, but it no longer felt like a place where he could be lost. Grandfather lifted the Bible slightly and said, "And finally, the sword of the Spirit." Eli's eyes widened at once. This was the piece he had been waiting for. In his mind, a sword flashed into being, long and bright, the kind carried into battle. His hand twitched on his knee as if he could already feel the grip closing in his palm. A blade made sense to him. A blade could cut through danger. A blade could drive fear back. He leaned forward, ready for something sharp and forceful. But Grandfather shook his head before Eli could say a word. The motion was small, calm, certain. It stopped the picture in Eli's mind. "This sword is God's word," Grandfather said. "It is not given so you can hurt people." He tapped the page with one finger. The paper gave a soft sound under his hand. "It is given so truth can guide you, comfort you, and teach you what is right." Eli looked from Grandfather's face down to the open Bible again. The power in front of him had changed shape. Not a weapon for swinging through the dark. Not strength in his arm. Strength in words that showed where to stand, what to do, and what not to follow. The last piece was still a sword, but now it pointed him toward truth, not force. Grandfather placed the Bible into Eli's hands. The book felt heavier than Eli expected, not hard to hold, but solid enough to make him adjust his grip. He set it across his knees and looked down at the lines waiting on the page. Grandfather leaned close enough to follow with him, then touched the first line with a finger and said, "Read this line." Eli drew one breath and began. He did not rush. He traced the words with one finger, sounding them out one by one. A few came easily. Then he reached a longer word, slowed, and caught himself halfway through it. His mouth stopped. Grandfather quietly gave him the missing part. Eli repeated it, then kept going. Line by line, the verse moved forward. They read about standing firm. They read about truth. They read about righteousness, peace, faith, salvation, and the Word of God. Each word entered the night as a spoken thing, not just black marks on a page. The crickets still sounded in the grass. Leaves still shifted overhead. But the verses kept moving through that quiet, steady, and clear. Eli heard his own voice saying them. Then he heard Grandfather's voice beside his. By the time they reached the end of the passage, the words no longer felt far away. They had begun to take hold inside him, settling there with the weight of something meant to be remembered. Grandfather let the last line fade into the night, then closed the space between them with a question. "What happens when you are frightened?" Eli did not answer at once. He looked down at the Bible in his hands, pressed his thumb against the page edge, and drew in one careful breath. A few minutes earlier, he might have searched for whatever answer sounded best. Now he searched for the truest one. "I can remember what God says," he said. Grandfather watched him, then asked the next question without hurry. "And when you make a mistake?" Eli's mouth tightened for a moment. He had already lived that one. Broken things. Wrong steps. The quick urge to cover them. He glanced toward the ground, then lifted his head again. "I can tell the truth and fix what I can." The words came out more firmly this time. Grandfather gave a small nod and asked the last question. "And when tomorrow feels too big?" Eli listened to the question, as if he had felt its weight many times before. He did not rush to outrun it. He set the Bible more securely across his knees and answered, "I can take one peaceful step at a time." The reply settled between them. Not loud, not grand, but clear. Eli had not become fearless in a single evening. He had learned what to do when fear arrived. Then the sky changed. A cloud slid across part of the stars and thinned their light in a matter of seconds. The yard dimmed. The fence line blurred. The branches above them lost their edges and merged into a single dark mass. Eli felt the shift at once. The uneasiness he knew from other nights came back without warning, quick and familiar. He looked toward the trees at the edge of the yard. In the darker light, the spaces between the trunks seemed deeper than they had a moment before. The leaves still moved, but now each rustle stood out. A faint scrape somewhere near the far side of the yard made him stiffen. He tightened both hands around the Bible until the cover pressed into his palms. A minute ago, he had answered with clear words. Now, his body remembered older habits. Run inside, get to the lamp, shut the door. He did not move. He swallowed once and kept looking into the dark, as if forcing his eyes to learn what was really there. The night breeze touched his face and moved past him. Crickets continued in the grass. A loose branch clicked softly overhead. None of it explained the tightness rising through his chest. The darkness had not come closer. It only felt closer. Eli stayed where he was, Bible held firm, facing the yard while the shadows waited without giving him an answer. Grandfather let the silence sit for one more beat, then spoke at last. "Try it now." The words were quiet, but they gave Eli something to do besides stare into the dark and wait for it to grow larger. He pulled in a careful breath. First, he imagined the belt. Truth. It wrapped around him in his thoughts and seemed to pull his scattered fear into one place. He was here, in the yard, beside Grandfather, holding the Bible. Then he pictured the breastplate settling over his chest. The tightness did not vanish, but it met resistance now, as if it had struck a closed door instead of an open space. Next came the shoes. He pressed both feet harder into the grass and felt the ground under him, solid and cool. One step at a time, Grandfather had said. He did not need tomorrow. He needed this moment. Eli raised the shield in his mind after that. Worry hit it first, then the old fear of the dark. Then the thought that he should run before anything could happen. Each one struck and slid away. He set the helmet in place and remembered that he belonged to God even here, with the trees black against the sky. Last came the sword. It's not for striking, but for holding to what God had said. The yard stayed dark. The wind still moved the branches. Eli felt all of it, but he did not fold in on himself. He stayed where he was. The test came without warning. A hard clatter ripped across the yard so suddenly that Eli's whole body jerked before he could think. The sound hit from the far side near the fence, sharp as wood striking wood, then scraping, then rolling once across the ground. Eli shot half upright. The Bible nearly slipped from his hands. His fingers clamped down so fast that the edge dug into his palms. For one instant, he could not place the noise at all. It was only impact, movement, and darkness. His breath caught high in his throat. Every small sound that had seemed distant a moment earlier vanished behind this one. The crickets disappeared from his notice. The leaves overhead no longer mattered. There was only that broken burst in the yard and the space it had come from. Eli stared toward the fence line, but the dark there gave him nothing back. No shape, no answer. Just black gaps between the posts and a patch of ground he could not read. Then came a second knock, lighter than the first, but close enough to confirm that something was still moving. Fear surged through him faster than all the words he had been repeating in his mind. His shoulders tightened. His knees bent under him, ready before he chose anything. The lesson had been clear while the yard stayed quiet. This was different. Now the dark had answered him. Eli's body had already chosen escape before his mind caught up. He pushed off the ground, weight tipping toward the door, one hand bracing to drive him upright. The Bible pressed hard against his ribs as he turned. Then, Grandfather's hand closed on his arm. Not hard, just enough to stop the motion. "Peace," he said. The word was low and even, with no strain in it at all. Eli froze in the middle of leaving. His heels dug into the grass. His chest kept racing forward, but the rest of him held. For a beat, he stood caught between two commands, the one from fear telling him to run and the one from grandfather telling him to stay. The second knock had left the yard vibrating in his nerves. He wanted walls, lamplight, a shut door. Instead, he had that single word, peace. Eli swallowed and forced air down into his lungs. It came in unevenly first, then deeper. Grandfather did not pull him closer. He did not step in front of him. He only kept that light hold on Eli's arm, steady as a post in the ground. Eli let his lifted shoulder drop. He stopped trying to wrench free of the moment. The dark beyond the fence was still dark. Whatever had moved out there had not named itself. But now Eli did something harder than running. He stayed still. He listened. Every part of him shook with the effort, yet his attention sharpened instead of breaking apart. For a few seconds, nothing happened, and that was almost worse. Eli kept listening so hard that the night seemed to stretch thin around each sound. A leaf dragged across the ground. A branch clicked once above him. Then, from near the fence, came a rough scrape, short and low, as if something had brushed wood and changed direction. Eli's eyes snapped toward it. He saw movement first, not form. A quick shadow broke from the darker patch beside the fence and shot across the yard. It passed the woodpile in a blur, fast enough to stir loose straw and send one dry chip skittering over the dirt. Eli flinched, but he did not bolt. He tried to fix the thing with his eyes, to separate head from body, legs from shadow, anything that would tell him what he was looking at. He got almost nothing, only a small shape, close to the ground, moving with sudden purpose. Eli's breath stopped again. The cart stood still. One wheel gave a faint creak, then settled. After that, no clear sound came from underneath, just the dark space between the wheels and the hard fact that something was in there now. Eli stared at the gap, held in place by the need to know and the fear of finding out. The cart gave another small thump from underneath, and Eli locked his eyes on the gap between the wheels. A beat later, something pale pushed out of the darkness and jerked back again. Then it came properly into view. Not claws, not a wild thing from the fields. A goat. It edged forward on stiff little legs, muzzle working busily as if nothing unusual had happened at all. A long strip of laundry hung from its mouth, damp at one end, twisted from all the chewing. The animal stopped beside the wheel, tore off another bite, and kept grinding away, calm as if the whole yard belonged to it. For a second, Eli could only stare. His body was still full of the fear he had gathered for something dangerous, and now there was nowhere for it to go. The goat blinked, shook its head once, and the stolen cloth slapped against its jaw. Grandfather said, "A goat," with the same calm certainty he had used before. That did it. The sound burst out of Eli before he could stop it. He laughed so suddenly that he had to bend forward and catch his breath. Grandfather laughed with him. The dark yard did not change, but the threat vanished completely. The cart was only a cart again. The fence was only a fence. And beside them stood a goat, chewing laundry as if it had solved the whole mystery itself. The laughter eased, but Eli could still feel the remains of the fright inside him. His chest rose hard once, then settled. He wiped at his face, looked from the goat to the cart, and tried to fit the harmless animal to the danger he had imagined only seconds earlier. The space near the fence had not changed. The shadows had not moved back. What had changed was what he knew. Grandfather let the quiet return before he spoke. Then he said that this had been Eli's first test. Eli turned at once, almost ready to object. A test sounded too important for something so small, and he could still remember the jump in his body when the bucket rolled. He had been afraid. That part was plain, but Grandfather's words held him there. Eli began to trace the moment backward. The clatter, the urge to run, the hand on his arm, the command to stop, the pause, the listening, the second scrape, the shape crossing the yard. He saw it more clearly now, not as one burst of fear, but as steps. He had not solved the dark by making it disappear. He had stayed long enough to let the dark give up its answer. That changed the whole moment. Fear had come first, fast and sharp, but it had not pushed him through the door. Eli drew a slower breath and understood at last that courage, at least tonight, had meant remaining where he was until his eyes and ears could tell him the truth. The yard grew quieter by degrees. One lamp after another went dark in the nearby houses. A door shut somewhere down the lane. Water tipped into a basin with a hollow sound, then stopped. Even the goat had wandered off, leaving the fence still again. Eli listened to the village settle and kept turning grandfather's words over in his mind. Grandfather looked at him and spoke without hurry. Bravery, he said, does not mean a person never feels afraid. Eli fixed on that at once. It cut directly across what he had been fearing for so long. Grandfather went on. Bravery means doing what is right when fear arrives. It means telling the truth when a lie would be easier. It means choosing kindness when anger would be quicker. It means trusting God one step at a time when the whole road cannot be seen. The words landed one by one, each with something solid under it. Eli could match them to things he knew: fear in the yard, the temptation to hide a mistake, the quick push to act wrong just to escape discomfort. Grandfather was not describing a hero from far away. He was naming the work of an ordinary night, an ordinary road, an ordinary decision made at the right moment. Eli turned his eyes toward the path, the fence, and the dark fields beyond the homes, then back again. He did not understand everything at once, but now he had something exact to hold. Bravery was not a feeling he had to wait for. It was a choice he could make when fear showed up. When they reached the door, Grandfather stopped at the threshold and gave Eli one more task. Name the armor. Eli answered carefully, touching one finger after another as he spoke. The belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of peace, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit. Grandfather nodded and sent him inside with the words still fresh in his mouth. Eli washed his face, climbed into bed, and pulled the blanket up. The room was dim. A last lamp burned low. The window clicked softly when the breeze touched it. From another part of the house came a small, settling creak. On other nights, sounds like that kept his body tight and watchful. Tonight, they reached him again for a moment. His hands drew hard against the blanket. Then he did what he had been taught. He named the armor again, this time inside his own head, piece by piece, in the same order. Truth, righteousness, peace, faith, salvation, the Word of God. Grandfather came to the doorway, and together they prayed. They thanked God for love, peace, courage, and faith. They asked for help remembering the truth each day. They asked for watch over the family and quiet rest through the night. Eli said the final amen with Grandfather. After that, the tightness in his fingers eased. His shoulders sank into the pillow. He stayed still, breathing more slowly, held by safety and trust. Grandfather lowered the lamp flame and left the door cracked open. Eli looked once toward the dark beams above him, then let his eyes close. The room did not grow quieter all at once. The window clicked again. Branches brushed softly outside. Somewhere deeper in the house, wood gave a small dry creak and went still. On another night, each sound might have pulled him back into worry. This time, he met them differently. If fear tried to rise, he knew where to turn. To truth, instead of hiding. To peace, instead of rushing ahead in his mind. To faith, when he could not see the next day clearly. To the steady fact that God was near him even here, in the dark, in the silence, in the ordinary room where he lay waiting for sleep. His hands stayed loose. His breathing slowed. The blanket rose, then fell. Outside, the wind moved through the trees again. Inside, Eli rested and did not fight the night anymore. Sleep came gently, not as a sudden drop, but like calm water settling after a stone has sunk. And if you are listening now, you can do the same. Breathe in slowly. Let it out. Remember what is true. Walk in peace. Hold faith when worries press close. You are not alone. God is near. Rest now, little one. Good night.